Okay, our first order is approving the agenda. Jeff, I believe, excuse me, Commissioner Morgan, I believe you have an addition.
I would like to add under environmental services, David Fahey's situation. Angie Berg will talk to it at that point.
Does anybody else have any other modifications? Otherwise, Commissioner Morgan, would that be considered to be a motion to approve the agenda with that modification?
Other than that, I would move to approve.
I'm sorry.
Excuse me.
Excuse
Do you
me,
have?
Commissioner, didn't we have one that we needed to delete?
We do under
Yes,
consent
that's consent.
agenda, so I figured we'd do that.
Oh, this is the whole agenda. I'm sorry.
It's the overall one.
All right.
So with that, I would move to approve the agenda.
Great, thank you.
Second.
Wonderful, thank you, Commissioner Notch. See no further discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And just so you know, unless we have a split vote, Randy is not going to be taking the roll because we're in person, so that's wonderful. Okay, our next item is employee recognition. We've got a resolution in front of us. Dr. Williams, do you want to say anything about this before we move forward on it?
I can.
Or I'm happy to, sir.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Hopefully you all got a chance to see in the packet. This is a resolution brought forward by AMC to the governor. The governor signed it proclaiming County Employee Appreciation Day today. I know that we are all very appreciative to our staff, who is only partially represented right now in this room, the many, many, many hundreds of people whose lives were, like everybody else, upheavaled, but really rose to the occasion, making changes to how we do work. And I know that we are all grateful for that. And as we move forward, are going to help us figure out how we keep meeting our residents' needs, perhaps in a slightly different way than we did before this. So you'll see, and I will go ahead and read it, if that's okay for the public who may be listening. Whereas Stearns County staff serve as the cornerstone of this community, dedicating their time, skills, and expertise for the benefit of their neighbors. And whereas Stearns County staff went beyond expectations, taking on personal risk to continue delivering essential services to the citizens of our county during the COVID-19 pandemic, and I would add continue to do that. Whereas in addition to their regular duties, many staff were called upon and accepted new and challenging responsibilities during the pandemic, such as expediting the distribution of thousands of dollars in economic delivery appropriations, empowering the survival of our local business community, successfully managing a deluge of mail-in ballots in an unprecedented federal election, vaccinating thousands of residents, and retooling local public health education outreach to flatten the curve. And whereas, although the state has turned the corner on the COVID-19 pandemic, Stearns County staff continue their exemplary work assisting with recovery through vaccination rollouts and preparing for the American Rescue Plan's multi-year recovery effort. And whereas the work of Stearns County staff over the past year and a half have kept the services of the county available and our community safer, healthier, and productive throughout the months of unprecedented global transition. And whereas President Svay and the Board of Association of Minnesota Counties requested the Office of Governor Walz and Lieutenant Governor Flanagan to proclaim July 27th as 2021 as County Staff Appreciation Day, and their request was granted. Now, therefore, we, the Stearns County Board of Commissioners, proclaim July 27th, 2021 as County Staff Appreciation Day, extend our thanks to the staff of our county, and express deep gratitude for their commitment to excellence and public service during the COVID-19 pandemic. And be it further resolved, as a small token of appreciation and recognizing that employees have limited their own activities during the pandemic, the Stearns County Board of Commissioners, through our wellness program, is sponsoring and providing a pass to Quarry Park for the remainder of the year to all employees. I do not know if other people have other comments. I will take the unusual step, because it's a resolution, of making the motion to adopt this resolution. There's a second.
I will second that with brief discussion.
Please do.
I'd like to thank everybody as well. I think it's a very commendable act of getting through this pandemic the way we did. I know many staff members went above and beyond what they needed to do in order to help residents of Stearns County, but also the residents of Stearns County. I appreciate those folks that made an effort to comply with the testing, with the vaccines, with the cooperation of the social distancing, and do what they can to suppress the pandemic. So great job all around the county, so very well done.
Any other comments? You don't have to. I think we probably summed it up in this proclamation. Okay, seeing no further comments, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. Thank you all. Please, for those of you who are here, please pass this on also to your staff and our staff as we continue to move forward. Thank you. And I will sign this actually while I'm sitting here. Okay. Next, we'll move on to, it almost feels like we should have even bigger celebration, but with so many people still working from home, we can't quite do that yet. So hopefully at some point in the future, we'll be able to really help acknowledge the wonderful work of our employees. The next item on our agenda is the Public Access Forum. If there's anyone wishing to address the board on issues not found on today's agenda, you may do so at this time, certainly in person or joining virtually. Dr. Williams, do we have anybody who was wanting to join virtually?
No one virtually.
Okay. So just as a reminder, you can join virtually either by contact us by phone or by email by noon on Monday preceding the meeting. And individual comments are limited to 3 or 4 minutes on items not in front of us. And county board members, in general, we don't engage in conversation, but we make sure that we're referring the matter to come back to us. And that citizens may speak at a public access forum once a month. All right, thank you. So consent agenda. Number 14, I believe, is the one that we're
Commissioner,
taking off.
Did-
correct?
did you ask if anybody is here for?
I'm sorry. I thought I did. So is there anybody here wishing to speak on this? Thank you. Okay. No.
Okay.
We do have some other items in front of us. So. Okay. Consent agenda. Number 14, is that the one that we're removing? I believe so.
I think the plan is to take that under environmental services.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we will remove number 14 from the public agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda, removing number 14?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Notch. Is there
I'll
second?
second with a question.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Morgan. Your question?
My question is on number 8, as I read through that, with the Mulberry Meadows situation, it says there's 5% interest charge?
On the special assessment.
Yeah. Is that 5% interest? Is that a little high for the current situation?
It's pretty standard, actually, it's come down over the years, but, so these are the special assessments we did a while ago, property sold, and now we're reassessing that property to get it back on there.
That 5% is pretty standard.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Morgan. Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor of passing the consent agenda, with the exception of number 14, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay. Consent agenda, we passed the consent agenda. All right, next item, and thank you all that we're here. Public Works. Ms. Tyke.
Good morning. My first item on the agenda is I'm asking the board to approve awarding the bid for the County Road 12 culvert replacement project. The board authorized advertising for bids at the June 22nd meeting. We did open bids last Thursday. You should have a bid summary in your blue folders. I'm asking the board to approve awarding the contract to Midwest Contracting LLC. They were 14.93% under the engineer's estimate with a bid of $199,998.
I'll move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Notch.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Persky. See no further discussion. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion's passed.
Thank you. For my next item, I'm asking the board to approve awarding the bid for our second 2021 seal coat contract. As you may recall, at your June 22nd meeting, the board authorized spending $800,000 in ARP funding on a seal coating contract. We were going to do that next year. Out of concern that the oil prices might continue to rise, we actually decided to advertise for bids with the approval of the auditor's office and the county administrator. So we advertised for bids this year. We opened bids last Thursday. A bid summary again is in your blue folders. Aztec Corporation came in with a bid that was 0.64% over the estimate. The additional amount over that $800,000 will come out of our maintenance budget, and this work would be done by September 1st of this year. So I'm asking the board to approve awarding that contract to Aztec.
I'll move to award the contract to Aztec.
Thank you, Commissioner Mergan.
I'll second that.
Commissioner Lensmeyer seconds it. Any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, the motion passes.
Thank you. For my next item, I'm asking the board to approve the 2022 to 2026 road program that is included in your agenda packets. This, of course, 2022 is subject to budget approval, of course. The program, as a reminder, does get updated every year in the May-June time frame, more often if necessary. One thing you will notice, we don't have that County Road 75 bridge in here yet, because that will depend if we get an appropriations congressionally directed funding amount in the appropriations bill. And if not, we might have to push that to 2023, but that would come back to the board to be added into the program for approval. Another item you might notice from 2022, we did push our County Road 54 resurfacing back 1 year simply because we have several culvert replacements that need to take place in advance of that. That'll give us a little bit more time. I don't know if the board has any other questions on the road program in general. Again, subject to budget approval, 2022 would be the only year that's kind of set in stone at this point.
Any questions? Okay, otherwise we'll look for a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Lodge. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Person. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
I do just have a couple of informational items under miscellaneous. As a reminder, the Washington, D.C. fly-in will be held September 21st to 23rd this year. I've heard some interest, but it would be a good idea if you are planning on going to reserve a hotel room as quickly as possible. The agenda is getting finalized right now. It sounds like there will be meetings of small groups with our congressional delegation. They're willing to meet with us, some off-site, some on-site. So let me know as quickly as possible, and then I can work with county administration to get those registrations done. And one more reminder, we do have a public informational meeting this Thursday at 5:30 at the Brockway Township Town Hall. That is related to the County Road 1 intersection improvements with County Road 17 and County Road 2. It sounds, we did get some public feedback, but we thought it would be good to follow up with those residents that had an interest to discuss the direction we're going to go and keep them all informed. So if anybody needs more information on that, you can certainly reach out to me and I can get you that information. And that's all I have for the board unless anyone has anything for me.
Jody, we're first time back today after COVID. How about the highway department as far as, were there things during COVID that we didn't accomplish that we wish we could have? Are we back to normal operations where we were before that? Can you just respond to anything we learned from COVID?
For the most part, it was business as usual. Obviously, our road maintenance crews, they showed up to work every single day. They continued plowing roads, maintaining roads. In 2020, we delivered a pretty aggressive construction program. The lower traffic volume certainly helped us with that to work a little bit more efficiently. We had to prepare a program for 2021. So with the exception that some people had to work from home, it was business as usual at the highway department. We, met with people off-site if we needed to, if there were questions or comments or people needed guidance through a process. So at the risk of sounding like I'm patting all of our staff on the back, they did continue to show up every single day just because they had to.
Yep, I'll just say you commend them for their service. Appreciate that and your service too. Thanks.
Thank you.
Seemed like they were able to get through some things that might have been a little bit harder, especially.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, environmental services. So while we have two items on the agenda, we have the two additions, the number 14 from the consent agenda and Commissioner Morgan's addition as well. Ms. Benson.
Madam Chair, Shelley Benson, Environmental Services Director. I have two staff with me today. Becky Schlorf will go through the first item, F1, and then Angie will address F2 and the other two items.
Great, thank you. Welcome.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. The item before you is to consider an alternate commissioner to be appointed to the One Watershed, One Plan projects policy committees. And in Stearns County, as many of you know, we do have 3 in the works, and each of them does have a policy committee or will. And we have the North Fork Crow River with Commissioner Mergen appointed already to that one. We have the Sauk River with Commissioner Notch appointed to that one. And then in the works is the Mississippi St. Cloud One Watershed, One Plan with Commissioner Clark appointed to that one. The policy committee with the SOC has been discussing having an alternate appointed so that if the commissioner is unable to be present and vote, that the county board would be still represented and voted, submitting a vote. So with that, I'm bringing before you today all 3 of them for consideration of naming an alternate. And then in your packet on page 320 is some more detail regarding what percentage of each of your commissioner districts is within each watershed area. And then if you have any questions, I guess I can answer those. Or Commissioner Notch, you may want to even address it since you've been on the policy committee with the SOC.
At our last meeting, last week, the week before, the discussion came up because with the Sauk River, there's 9 entities involved at the policy committee. So when projects are brought forth, for review prior to the watershed maybe implementing them for the funding portion, so to make sure everyone has a voice at the table, if I couldn't make it, well, now Stearns County, there'd be no vote there. So then as a group, we said, well, maybe we need to have alternates so every entity is represented and can make a vote. So thus this came forward now as a request, and I believe staff then added the other 2 as well.
Well, I am certainly willing to become your alternate. There's a fair amount of our population is impacted, unless somebody else wants to do that. I think the other 2 makes more sense for somebody else. Obviously, I'm doing one of them. Eventually, I'll get to do one.
And I'd be willing to be the alternate on North Fork. I already
great.
attend the meetings.
Yeah,
So.
that's great. Okay. And then the Mississippi River St. Cloud, Lee, do you want to be the alternate on that, or Commissioner Mergen?
I would, but it hasn't been a problem that I could tell in our area.
Well, we haven't, they actually have, they're forming the policy groups. There has been no meetings yet, but so if I couldn't go, then you would be the person. That's what we're really talking about, is if somebody can. I know that Jeff and Steve have kind of been
Okay,
covering things.
right about the time there's a nuclear attack, it sounds like, but, okay.
Yeah, that sounds great. So we need a motion for that, don't we? Okay,
I'll move those 3 alternates.
great. Thank you, Commissioner Mergen.
I'll second that with
Great.
the comment.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Notch. Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Steve?
Yeah, let's see, where was it? The Sauk River watershed, I know at our next policy committee meeting, they requested the alternates be there just to kind of get everybody up to date. And it's probably something even on North Fork, because they were a pilot one, maybe would have helped to have the second individual right from the get-go, because the Sauk River one's been, what is it, beginning of 2018, late 2017, this all started. You know, so it's obviously COVID, made the process a little bit longer, but, you know, there's a lot that goes into it, and probably having two at the table right away would have helped. But it's possible to catch up once. Right now, the Sauk River watershed one plan is with Bowser they're reviewing it for approval. So
it sounds like the recommendation is for the alternates to go to the next meeting to get someone up to speed and probably talk to the staff people. And then after that, I just don't want to scare Lee away. After that, it would be if the person can't, the member couldn't attend, unless somebody wants to go to all of
right,
them. And then
I know on the Sauk River, it's just because we're at that crucial point now
Okay.
where having that alternate there to understand how the process is going to work.
Okay. I
Is
appreciate that
crucial.
heads up.
You know, North Fork's already in place. So,
Okay.
and then the Mississippi St. Cloud, I don't know if is that one watershed one plan even.
We are, Commissioner, we are waiting for Bowser to make their decision on the funding or the approval of that one.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
And then we'll be awaiting the Mississippi Sartell one, hopefully fairly soon
Down
after
the
that.
road, yep.
Hopefully, since like that's all connected, right, Commissioner Persky? Yes, okay, all right, we have a motion and a second. See no further discussion. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Berg, welcome.
Ooh.
No, yes, you've got more to juggle, don't you?
All right, good morning, Angie Berg with Environmental Services. And if you'd like, we can go ahead and take item number F2.
Sure.
And this is to consider the Planning Commission's action on a rezoning submitted by Brandon and Tracy O'Leary of St. Joe. And if concur with the Planning Commission, you would be looking to enact ordinance number 629. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on this rezoning July 15th. The rezoning is for 10 acres from agricultural 40 to residential 10. The township did recommend approval of the rezoning, as did the Planning Commission on a unanimous vote. Recommended action is to enact ordinance number 629.
Any questions or comments on this item?
I'll move approval, Madam
Thank
Chair.
you. Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. See no further discussion or questions. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion's passed. Okay, which of the next two would you like to go to?
Yes, Madam Chair, why don't we take D14? That was the item pulled from the consent agenda. This is to consider a conditional use permit for and after the fact shoreline alteration permit submitted by NMH Properties of Avon. And the Planning Commission held a couple public hearings on this. Commissioner Persky, as the liaison, was at those meetings. The Planning Commission did recommend denial. The reason we are asking the board to pull it in is because we have received a withdrawal of the application from the applicant, and he has been working with an attorney and our office and the county attorney's office to enter into a stipulation agreement, which basically means he's going to obtain an after-the-fact construction site permit for the shed pad that he built, and then be authorized to fill in the borrow pit area he created, and also obtain a minor shoreline alteration permit for the areas that qualify under the minor. So really, Madam Chair, members of the board, all you need to do in this particular situation is acknowledge the withdrawal of the application. There isn't any action for you today, but we didn't want you to concur with the Planning Commission because that would have denied it.
So basically, it really isn't in front of us anymore because they've withdrawn it.
Correct.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions about this one? Otherwise, we'll acknowledge the withdrawal. It's good when resolutions can get worked out.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. Commissioner Mergen, do you want Ms. Berg to explain it?
Yes, Angie volunteered to speak to this
Great.
situation.
I always find that helpful.
Thank you.
Well, when a county commissioner asks you to do something, usually you say yes. But yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And Commissioner Morgan and I visited a David Fahey property on Rice Lake last Friday. And Mr. Fahey had applied for a major shoreline alteration permit in 2019. And how it occurred was that he was granted a minor permit, and the minor turned into a major. And then the Planning Commission and subsequently County Board denied the application. With COVID, we were respectful of, as we all were, of things changing and him not wanting people on his property and everything kind of being up in the air. So we reinitiated conversations with Mr. Fahey through the attorney's office, and that prompted the property owner to call Commissioner Bergen for a site visit. So we went out and conducted a visit on Friday, and the walls and are in place, functioning as designed. The property is fully vegetated. At this point, I believe Commissioner Morgan is going to be asking the board to waive a fee for Mr. Fahey to come back and reapply for a major shoreline alteration permit. Without that, it's a denial, and we need to act on that denial. So, unless I missed anything.
So, thank you, Angie. I don't know
Questions?
if you want to explain a little bit of what he's attempting to do there as far as the handicap situation.
Okay, let's go ahead and have you do that first, or one of you do that, and then Commissioner Persky's got a question.
Yes, Madam Chair, Commissioners, so Mr. Fahey's goal in the situation is to gain access from his home down to the lake, and he created a bit of a, I don't want to call it a switchback, but per se, I don't have the photos in front of me today, but it's to achieve access to the lake. He, for handicap purposes, has some challenges there, and that was the original intent, and again, that is functioning as planned. It's just not a permitted situation.
Okay. And so what will be in front of us, and I'm guessing, Commissioner Morgan, you're going to make the motion.
I would move that his second fee to the Planning Commission be waived.
So he will be, if we approve this, he will be coming back to do
To the
the
Planning
major
Commission.
permit. And the department will be, if there's something specific to bring back to us, they will do so. I don't know if we want to get a second in and then take questions, if that's okay, Commissioner Persky. Is there a second to this motion?
Yeah, I'll second. So
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Persky.
Angie, so then they'll be coming back for a second approval, then you're saying? Because I think there were some other issues there as far as the hillside and the vegetation on the hillside, and there might have been some other questions about that. So we're not going to be approving everything that was in place. Is that correct?
Well, today, Commissioner Persky, my understanding is this is only about whether we're going to waive the fee for them to come back with the major permit that will still need to comply with our ordinances as probably impacted by the ADA or whatever other appropriate statutes. Do I have that correct?
Madam Chair, I don't know if I want to get into that today, but again, I think the intent is from Commissioner Morgan to ask the board to waive the $550 after the fact CUP fee. The intent would be we would work with Mr. Fahey to come back to the Planning Commission for a public hearing, and then ultimately the board would hear it for the final decision.
Okay.
So nothing else is being
But you were
approved
just doing
except
the
for the
fee,
waiver
just
of
the
the
waiver
fee.
of the fee.
Yes.
And then just.
Because I'm sure you've got other questions, but none of that's going to be in front of us.
No,
right now.
we'll see that at the Planning Commission then, because there were some challenges on the property. Yeah, okay.
Steve, excuse me, Commissioner
So
Knott.
the original permit was for a minor?
Ms.
Madam
Burke.
Chair, Commissioner Notch, yes, the original permit was for a minor. It turned into a major due to wall height and length, I believe, and that's what the Planning Commission and the board heard was the major application.
So he had gone through for the major one already, and that was turned down?
Correct. The minor was approved, then the major was applied for, the major was denied, and now because of the time lapse, he's allowed to come back and ask for the major again. So it's going to be the same one that you heard, but enough time has lapsed where he can come back and ask for it, given the circumstances that I stated earlier.
So then just to clarify, do you anticipate any changes to what he was proposing? Or do you believe we're going to see the same?
Madam Chair, members of the board, Commissioner Mergen can give his take too. I believe he intends to come back to leave it as constructed. And I don't believe
That was my understanding.
Commissioner
Yep.
Morgan? Okay. Commissioner Persky?
But then we'll deal with that after, it'll come back to the planning commission. Planning commission will make their visits, site visits, they'll have it at the planning commission meeting and then bring it back to us for consideration.
Correct. That's correct.
And one last a question then,
Commissioner
as far as waiving the fee, again, just in fairness to everybody else, you know, are we doing what would be appropriate for anybody else, waiving the fee in this particular circumstance? That's, you know, in consideration of fairness to other people that do pay the fee.
I think anybody can come and ask to have their second fee waived. And that's happened before, where people have done that.
Commissioner Persky, is I don't want to put words in your mouth, is your point that people may not know or may not contact a commissioner about that?
And just the fact that you request doesn't necessarily mean that it should be granted.
Right.
I mean, if we have that policy about having the fee, do we tell them, well, you can come back and request it not to be administered? I mean, I'm just wondering about the fairness question.
The question I have in this particular case is, since it appears that it will be the same application that's been had a public hearing and denied, I guess I was thinking there might be something that was different that changed. So a question I would have is,
Madam
would
Chair.
we be doing waivers when somebody's coming back and proposing something else? Of course, they have a right to do it, but does that mean we should be granting that? I'm not sure. Because I thought, Commissioner Morgan, when you were starting that he was proposing to do, I know that he's made those changes, it is after the fact, but there may be some other
He
rationale
made
or
some
something else.
changes because of washouts that were occurring, was my
Okay.
understanding.
So something may have changed since it was denied.
Madam Chair, I don't think
Ms. Berg,
so. I
sorry.
think the change is that there was a change from what would have been granted compared to what was denied. There was a section of the wall that he added because, as Commissioner Mergen stated, there were some washouts occurring that he felt that if he didn't put the entire wall length in, he was going to continue to have erosion into the
And it
lake.
was going right into the lake.
Okay,
Right.
that's helpful. Commissioner Persky, did you have something else?
Then will we be paying a new application fee for this second one?
That's
When you
what,
reapply.
the question is whether we're waiving. That's what's in front of us. Are we waiving the application fee? Correct?
That's correct, Madam Chair.
Okay.
That's the only question.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I think we need a roll call.
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Nay.
Aye. And I will say, the reason why is because of the washout. Otherwise, I'd probably be saying nay. I think if something's already been denied by the planning commission and the board, we probably shouldn't be waiving it in general. Okay, thank you. So we're going to take a brief break, 5-minute break, and then unless you want to keep going. Oh, okay, I read it wrong, sorry. Admin, administration, Dr. Williams, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is somewhat an environmental services issue too, but excuse me, the Planning Commission at its last meeting made a recommendation to impose a moratorium on solar and wind development in the county, and they wanted that recommendation brought to the board today. And so I wanted to make sure that that was on the agenda and acknowledged. but I certainly, this board wouldn't be in a position to take any action today. And it also didn't seem appropriate, given, at this time when tomorrow you have a study session, you're going to devote an hour and a half to learning more about solar energy policy in general. And certainly, if you were going to consider this any further, you'd have to understand really what the procedures are to do this, and need to understand the ramifications of taking that action, and what it would entail afterwards. So certainly, you wouldn't be in a position to do anything about that today. I think you can hold your study session tomorrow. Deem if you need more information later, and consider or not consider this recommendation at a later date. That's all I.
Okay,
Excuse me,
thank you.
that's
So
all.
we're acknowledging that this occurred at the end of the last Planning Commission meeting. We're going to continue with our study session tomorrow and figure out what other information we may need, or I'm guessing we will get some advice and some legal advice if we decide we want to be going forward in terms of what our process would need to be. Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes, we're having discussion, but not a vote. So go ahead.
Yeah, there was no motion made.
Mr.
I'm a little bit concerned about where we are with this because of the recommendation by the Planning Commission, but also hearing from townships that, switching our policy to making it a permitted use, so that even as we're questioning what we should be doing with solar and these community gardens, that we would still accept these to go in without allowing the townships and the public to have a public hearing or to have any input on that. If we're indecisive about what we're doing with these solar gardens, imagine the townships that are actually experiencing having them placed in their township and not having a voice in that.
So respectfully, we're going to have a conversation tomorrow, and this was based on our comp plan, and there was a public hearing for what we put into an ordinance with ample opportunity for people to participate in both. So Commissioner Persky, we're going to have our study session tomorrow, and we can start talking about what else. That's the reason why we're having it, is to be talking about where are we going, what are we doing, and the public needs to be able to have some certainty, which they did once we put an ordinance in place. So I'm going to go ahead and say something, but we're not going to kind of re-go through this again today, because we have a study session tomorrow, which may include something else after that and a process. So go ahead,
Okay,
Commissioner Persky.
Madam Chair, but this is an important issue for many of the townships, because we did this during COVID, and I think there was a misunderstanding about what we were doing. I don't think we necessarily had the input appropriateness from the townships to be heard. Now, under this situation, a solar garden could be placed into a position where the neighbors don't want it, the township doesn't want it, but yet we just feel it's our ability to go ahead and move forward by placing it there.
So I'm going to acknowledge what you're saying, but we're not voting on anything today, and you have brought these things up before, and we do know that we've got somebody who's been contacting township folks, so we're going to have our study session tomorrow. It's not appropriate for us to take any action today, and we'll be moving on. Commissioner Lensmeyer.
It isn't about who wants what. It's about criteria being set and whether or not that criteria is met. So I think that's the most reasonable way to handle it. And historically, it's what we've done.
Right. So we'll, Commissioner, wait just a moment, Joe, just a second. We'll get a chance to, I don't know that you're going to be saying anything new today, and there is no action going to be taken today. So as we're coming forward with our study session and we're determining what, if any, process we're going to use going forward, I think Commissioner Lensmeyer just had a very good point. There is a lot, as you all know, that people go through on this. So, and the public had no notice about this action. It was highly unusual. So I don't think we want to spend a lot of time today. The good news for the Planning Commission is we were already going to be looking at this. So we are going to move forward with our study session and then figuring out together where we're going. So I appreciate that, but I think that horse is dead for the moment. It might be resurrected tomorrow, to use Commissioner. I don't know that we're going to have full resurrection, but for where we are today, that's where we're at.
Madam Chair? First of all, I think we're driving in fog, and I'm afraid what's going to be happening. Again, as these solar gardens are continued to be placed in the county, these townships, the neighbors have no say in what's going on in their neighborhood. And I think we've heard from a number of them, we've heard it from a number of residents, that they would like to have that say. Now, you're saying we can't take that vote today. Take the vote, what, on a moratorium? What we could do something is we could just take a step backwards and say we're going to redo the policy that we had in place, or at least give these folks a chance to have their voice heard.
We
Or we,
actually,
Madam
we've
Chair,
actually have legal advice about that, Commissioner Persky. Today, we're not taking any action. We will have to figure out if we're going to move forward, even on what you're suggesting, what the public process is on that. At this point, most of the public doesn't know that any of this has been occurring. So I can see that you're getting understandably kind of worked up about this, but there is no action today. We have a meeting tomorrow, and we will move forward as we get through that meeting.
okay, I can understand that. So, Madam Chair, then, if you're saying that we cannot take any action, then today, but we could then not take any action
Correct.
until our next.
We need to figure out, we would, after we get some information, we're going to make a decision about whether we need more information or what that looks like. And again, there was a lot of public engagement opportunities during the comp plan. So I'm saying that, and I know you're going to say something different, but I'm just going to say that again. With lots of opportunity to participate, if we go down a different road, we will have to get legal advice and process advice from staff. We're going to need them to go back and look at what we need to do and how to make sure an array of voices are heard if we do that. So again, it was highly unusual. The good news for the Planning Commission, if for those who wanted a deeper dive, we're already doing a deeper dive. We're starting that, and we're going to be working on that tomorrow.
Madam Chair, but while we sit there and spin in the fog, we're going to allow these solar gardens to be placed anywhere in the county. And so what I'm going to suggest then is then we can allow the townships to move forward if they would care to.
The townships are absolutely able to go ahead and put a moratorium on themselves. If they would choose to do that, they can do that. There's a process for them to do that. But again, we're having a meeting tomorrow, Commissioner Persky, and we will be having other board meetings coming up in the near future. It's not like a gold rush. It's not like something else is happening here. And I think this board also really respects the rights of the property owners. It's a pretty stringent process. They can't just go not anybody can put them anywhere, as you know. So again, I don't know what action you were hoping for today, but we're acknowledging it, and then we're going to have our meeting tomorrow, and then I don't know that at our meeting tomorrow we will even determine the next steps. But we did just put this ordinance in place. So just as a reminder. And I'm going to say that we're done with this right now.
Okay, Madam Chair, I'm just going to comment that I feel it disheartening that there seems to be a push to cater to these solar companies without looking at the best interests of the public. And I'm deeply saddened by that.
And I guess I will make one other statement from myself. I think we've had a strong process. We've had lots of public involvement through the years on this. We put together a comprehensive plan in place that gives some flexibility to our property owners. This was included in that. And I think that might be a miscategorization of that. This is also about our farmers and our property owners as we move forward. Again, let's just all just try to breathe deeply, because I think our board has done a great job working together on a number of challenging issues, and we're going to continue to do so. So with that, we're going to take a 5-minute break, and we will be back to get some redistricting information, or perhaps not a lot of information about the census probably quite yet, but hopefully some time frame.
I have them all muted.
Welcome.
So the apportionment outcomes, as you've probably heard, Minnesota did keep its congressional seats, and that's represented by the white states on the map. So all those kept the same number of seats, and we kept our last seat by 26 people, so it was a very narrow margin for us to keep our seats. Why don't you go back to that a little bit? So the states in the green did gain seats. Texas gained 2, and the other ones in green gained 1, and then the purplish, light purplish, did lose a seat. So that's what happened on the national level. Okay, so for the congressional districts in Minnesota, what the population has done here is the area in the blue has either not grown as fast or went backwards in population. So those areas will need to get bigger. They'll need to expand. And as you see, Minnesota is split by a congressional district. And those areas in the tan are the ones that grew faster than average. So they'll need to get larger. So it's possible that that line may go to the east. And I guess we don't know what redistricting will look like, but there certainly will be some changes in Stearns County. So.
Madam Chair?
Wait, Joe?
That dark section in the center, of course, that's the metro area.
Yes.
You're saying that is actually growing even faster?
Yes.
And so rather than growing larger, with those districts there will actually grow tighter.
Yeah, well, let's go to the next slide.
Let's have him
now.
go through the presentation and then
Yep.
ask questions.
The
if
next
that's okay.
slide, Joe, I think will show that a little better. Okay, so this is the legislative districts, and it's the same premise here is that the blue is actually is underrepresented by 4%, and then the light blue is 1 to 4% below the ideal population. The white on there is within 1%, and the tan is between 1 and 4% above the ideal, so they're going to need to grow. And then the brown is over 4% above the ideal population. So the suburbs of the cities, and then even Stearns County up the Sartell area, are the areas that will need to change the most. That's where they'll shrink. That's where the population growth was the greatest. So in the core of the city, there is some different colors, and it's hard to see there, but there is some white, and there's some tan, and there's some brown. So. Okay, redistricting is the process of redrawing the boundaries of election districts done after the census. The purpose of redistricting is to ensure that people in each district are equally represented. So that's what we're trying to do with redistricting. Who does redistricting in Minnesota? So in order, the legislature will do the congressional legislative districts first. Then after that, the city councils and town boards will do their redistricting. For Stearns County, the school boards, they redistrict if they're elected by district. And in Stearns County, the schools are elected at large, so there'll be no redistricting needed in Stearns County for the schools. And then the county, we're the last ones to do redistricting. Congressional legislative boundaries, they can go anywhere. They're looking, they basically don't look at the precinct lines that exist. They look at the census blocks. And for the congressional, they are trying to get that exactly the same. So every congressional district is the same number of people. So that's why you see some odd things, and they'll follow some weird lines like a driveway or a county ditch or something like that. Precinct boundaries is what we'll end up having to follow, and these are the boundaries that have been established by the legislature or by our cities or townships. So we'll have to follow the precinct boundaries when we do our redistricting. So after the state and federal plans are complete, cities will establish their precinct boundaries. The things that we watch, of course, are the municipalities with multiple precincts, one split by congressional legislative districts, and also where there was a county commissioner boundary. So those are things we pay attention to. So not all counties have to redistrict. If they didn't see a lot of changes or if these things didn't happen, they actually don't have to redistrict. So things might require you to redistrict is the precinct boundary that was a commissioner district is no longer there. Annexations have created a non-contiguous district. And the biggest one is district populations vary by more than 10% from average. So our responsibilities, number one, is either reestablish county commissioner districts, but I think we'll probably fall under number two. We'll redraw new county commissioner districts just because we see the change in population in the county. And our statutory requirements is to adjust the district boundaries following the census, create districts that are equal in population as practical, and then create election districts that are compact and contiguous. And I'm going to turn it over to Dave, and he'll continue on.
Morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Some of
Morning,
what
Mr. Walls.
we're going to cover here is going to be restating the obvious, but some of it's going to be kind of new. I do have the 2021 redistricting guide. It's only 80 pages. I can make it available to you because I know you'd love to pour through this and become as expert on this as we hope to become. So the commissioner district plans are going to include the district description and numbers just like we do now. Nothing changes there. We'll have to go and reestablish your terms. That's always kind of a big deal. Roxanne's going to talk about that in a little more detail in her part of the presentation. And we don't necessarily have to continue the same pattern of terms. So we start from zero. Someone's going to have, assuming we are redistricting, some may need 2-year terms and 4-year terms as we go forward. So it's a clean slate. Go ahead. We talked earlier a little bit about concerns about the need to have the public involved or aware. And this will try to address by publishing the district plans. They're hard to read in newspapers. So we recommend that they be posted or made available. We can email them out to people if they want to know. We'll notify the Office of the Secretary of State, the cities and the townships, and we rely on them to also distribute and make the plans aware to their constituents or their residents. The internet is our best bet. We'll put those on our websites, and we will encourage any of the cities and towns with websites to do the same so that people can see them. You can zoom in and zoom back out, and it's a little easier because some of the detail can be small, as you know. Voters can contest those plans after you pass one. It's a very tight timetable, but in certain cases, the county, as Randy said, may not need to redistrict. But voters can file suit with the district court and try to convince the judge that you ought to anyway, because of the shapes of what was done 10 years ago. So they have that option to do so, or they can require revision or take suit to require revision to a plan that you may have passed. A very tight time frame there, as I said. So they have up until May 10th to file, and by May 17th, you will be filing for office, those of you who need to run again. So there's a 1-week period there. And the important part of this is it's not the auditor, treasurers, or the election staff that defend that. Since you passed the plan, you are the litigants in that case. Okay. So if the court comes back and says, we have some questions about why you chose Plan A over Plan B, it will be up to you to respond to that, or through your attorneys to respond to that. The auditor and election staff will certainly assist you in that, in coming up with rationales of why one plan is better than another, but you will be the litigants in that. Oh, did I miss one? Yeah, let's go with that. And this just gives you a schedule of how tight the time frame is there. And you'll notice that March 29 is the precinct and city redistricting deadline, and then already on April 17, our filings open. May 17, early filings open for the 22 primary and general elections. So there's not a lot of time in there for us to consider these plans. I'm not exactly sure where the congressional and legislative plans completed is. It's supposed to be done by February 15th. That would be a rarity in this will be my third redistricting. I don't I don't think we've ever had them done by that date. And oftentimes, those plans go to court, or sometimes the legislature just gives them to the court and says, here, you guys figure it out. So I'm not exactly sure how that will play out yet. We're hoping they can stay as close to that schedule as possible, because the window for all that public information and for you to consider plans is very tight, so you're aware. Okay, Roxanne. Again, most of the obvious here is we need as many districts as we do commissioners, so if we want to have 5 commissioners, we'll need to come up with 5 districts. Randy already mentioned that the districts will be bounded by precinct lines. And some of the requirements for you to consider is, are they contiguous, regular, compact, do they fit within the 10% rule? And we'll talk about some of those examples right in our next slide. So here's an example of non-contiguous territory. So any plan that we have where this is within your district, where you have 2 precincts that meet at a point, that's not going to be acceptable. You can pass that plan, but it's really not an acceptable plan according to statute. And you could probably expect some kind of you'd be inviting challenge based on that thing. So what we need is for the upper left box to either come down and be right across from the lower right box or on top of it. That's contiguous, is when there's a long border that meets. I think the perfect commissioner district looks like a rectangle or a square. I think the guide says it should look like a circle, but I don't see how that's not possible. Where your precincts or your townships and cities meet at a point is not going to be considered contiguous. And people do submit plans that look like that, and I would discourage you from picking that one. The next one is that commissioner districts are to be as regular and compact in form, and that's where we wouldn't pick one that runs all the way from the east side of the county all the way to the west side of the county. We try to make them, again, more rectangular or cube-shaped as much as possible, considering the population issues that we have to deal with. So the 10% rule that I mentioned earlier means that the populations of each district can't vary more than 10% from the average for all the districts, unless the result forces a voting precinct to be split. So let's go to the 10% rule. If we take 150,000 population, which is about what we had last time, divide it by your 5 commissioner districts, we come up with an average of 30,000. So we need each one of your districts to be within 10%. So 10% of that would be 3,000 would be our threshold. For example, District 1 has a population of 29,000 and some odd. The average is 30,000, so your variance is 450 on that one. It can be plus or minus. Since the variance is less than the threshold of 3,000, no adjustment needs to be made. So we have to do that for all of them, and Roxanne will show an example later on. And we would like to encourage that we pick the plan that has the least variance, so that everybody's not at 0, 0, 0, and then one's at 3,000. That everybody's got a little over, everybody's a little under, but the variances are as close to 0 as possible. Not always possible to do that. Sometimes there is more variance than others, and I think Roxanne will talk about that later. So that's one of there's 2 percentage rules out there, and this is the first one. So the tests are, as I just mentioned, how close is it to the 0 variance? Here, compactness, how close in shape to a circle? Well, we're not going to hopefully design any that look like a circle. And contiguity, are there any islands or peninsulas? And also, is there equal protection? So are voters treated in an equal manner? We do, I think, most of that through the elections process. We make sure that there's precincts, everybody's using the same equipment. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Randy, but that's how we ensure that voters are treated in an equal manner. We don't say, oh, this precinct over here, they have to use hand count ballots, and we won't know the results till tomorrow. So we try to treat everybody equally throughout the county. Which commissioners will need to run? If your normal rotation would say that your 4-year term is up, then yes. And then, if the commissioner's district has had a change greater than the 5% rule, Let's talk about the 5% rule, and we'll go back to the original numbers. If the county population is 150,000 divided by 5, the average is the 30,000. With the 5% rule now, the threshold is 1,506. Last time it was 3,000. Now it's 1,500. So if District 1 had a pre-redistricting population of 30,000 and a post-redistricting of 30,100, you think, oh, we only a 100% change. That's less than the 1,506. However, we have to count the population that shifted out of the district and the population that shifted into the district. So if we shifted 1,000 out and 1,100 in, you'd say, oh, that's only 100. But the total population shift is 2,100. Our threshold was 1,506, which is in excess of the 5%, so this person would have to run, even though they've only had a net change in their population of 100. The concept is that 95% of the people who elected you that's who you should be representing. In this case, it's more than that. And so you have to rerun to give the voters a chance to affirm that choice. So there's a 10% rule when we're picking the territory, and then there's a 5% rule which determines whether or not you have to run again. Okay? I think I talked about all this. When the net change is 100, the commissioner needs to run again. So it's not simply the net change in the size of the population, but the total number of individuals affected by redistricting that needs to be considered. Okay, Roxanne, you are up. Anybody have any questions about the percentages? Good.
And really quickly, so we don't necessarily have enough data yet because you were not down to a precinct level yet, or, I mean, I'm guessing you may be inkling to us that more than Commissioner Notch and I may be up for election, perhaps, or we shouldn't assume that it's only Commissioner, if we're running again, but I believe we're both running again, so.
I wouldn't inkle anything from this presentation.
Okay.
We won't know until we have general census information, but it's not down to the actual city block.
Right.
We go down to the actual city block to see how many people live
Which
on
makes
the city
sense.
block.
So, Commissioner Mergen.
So everybody that was normally up in the 4-year rotation would have to run again.
Yes, sir.
Then, okay, let's say there's, I don't know how many, there are 2 or 3 of those. Let's say the other ones have more than that 5% rule. But isn't there also a rule that all 5 commissioners do not run? That we have to have at least 2 run every 2 years?
Mr. Walls.
Thank you. I'm not aware. I would believe all 5 of you would need to run, and you would have to determine then which of you would run for 2-year terms and which would run
Yeah.
Right.
for 4-year terms in order to get you back into that rotation to which you're
Okay, so
referring.
every 2 years, at least 2 commissioners do
Correct.
have to be on the ballot.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Commissioner Mergen, there's apparently some suburban counties and perhaps Olmsted that are already anticipating that they will have more than who was originally thinking they were running, just by the broader growth.
Yeah,
Mr. Walls.
the most I can say about preliminary numbers is it looks like the metro area here is going to shrink a little. Just a little.
So it's too early to tell,
Yeah,
and we shouldn't get too worried about it, but we also,
But that
you're putting
possibility-
us on notice that we
But
might.
that possibility does exist, where
Yeah.
all 5 would be on the ballot.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Commissioner Lensmeyer, did you have something else? I mean, you've been through
Yeah,
this a few times.
I mean, there's certain things that are obvious right off the bat. In the area with the greatest change in the county is Sartell. And then much beyond that, everything else will be an adjustment to that most significant change. So stay tuned.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Lensmeyer.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. This is an example of a plan that was submitted back in 2012. This is, actually, I believe this is one that was probably adopted back then. So this shows a little bit about what Dave was referring to as far as the population and the 10% and the 5% rule. It shows each commissioner district, the population, and then also the average population and the population deviation. So, and then in the far right-hand corner, it showed which districts had to rerun that year.
So
Yes.
So we'll provide you, along with a map of the plan, we'll provide you with a spreadsheet similar to this. We saved our spreadsheets from 10 years ago. We're going to reuse them, excuse me. So, yes, sir? Oh.
Sorry about that.
Sorry, so no problem. So you can see, we're going to go down District 1, the populations. You'll be able to see the variances that we talked about. So whether you're in the 10% rule or the 5% rule, we'll plot that out for each plan. So it's pretty self-explanatory, and we'll provide you with that information when it's time for you to choose between the plans. So you'll be able to make good comparisons.
Randy, do you need to go to a mic? Sorry. This is very touchy now.
Yeah,
Sorry about that.
So on the very top, we'll kind of go through some of the significant changes or factors that makes this plan, interesting or good or bad. So, yeah, and then the bottom is, of course, all the stats, and the last two columns, of course, are of very high interest: the deviation and then who runs. So,
Thank you.
And as Dave mentioned, with each plan, we'll provide a map of that plan. So basically, the redistricting summary, all plans need to be considered by the county board, and we'll have plans that show the lowest deviation and also plans that with the highest deviation. And as Dave and Randy talked about, we'll have that spreadsheet with each map with all the plans that are submitted. With the elections of commissioners, so what if redistricting causes a commissioner's residence to be shifted into another district? So you may continue to serve in the office between May 31st, 2022, which is the last day to file, and then the end of your term if you remain a resident of the county. Commissioners that are elected in 2020, this could include their full 4-year term if the change is less than 5%. Is less than the 5% rule. And then commissioners must reside in the district when they are elected. I think Dave touched on this a little bit as far as the staggered terms. So it will be up to the county board to decide who will rerun and who will run for 2 years or for 4 years. So some of the methods for determining the staggered terms, like I said, that is something that the county board, it's really up to the board who's going to run. Sure.
So Lee probably remembers this, but the last 2 times, we asked the board of how many positions need to get a 2-year term, right? And there was nobody came out and I guess agreed with that. So we had the commissioners pick things out of the hat to determine that. So that's one method we could do. And I guess once we get to that time, we can figure that out. But right, it has to be part of the redistricting plan you adopt. So.
Thank you.
All right, and then with redistricting, this is a time if the board chooses to increase the size of the county board. Counties with a population greater than 100,000 may increase the size of the board from 5 to 7. The board would need to adopt a resolution, and the new commissioner in District 6 is elected. They would run for a 4-year term, and a new commissioner in District 7 that is elected would run for a 2-year term. Some of the challenges to county redistricting plan, and I think Dave touched on this a little bit. If a voter or an eligible voter wanted to, they could file in district court. Again, they must be an eligible voter. Some of the grounds the board that someone could file is that the board has not been redistricted on time. they may claim that revisions needed to be done to the redistricting plan, and it must be filed no later than 1 week before the first day to file for office. Any questions on redistricting?
I just want to make a comment on this. Brenda Tice did send me the redistricting cases for local challenges, and so this does happen. And not only if you're over 10%, which some counties did that, and that was challenged, and the court, sent it back to the county, or the court can do their own redistricting commission and do it themselves. So you can lose the authority to do that. Also, there was a case where it was still within 10%, but there was plans that were more compact and had better percentages, and the court also sent that back to the county. So these challenges do happen. They're not like a rare thing. So it is a serious matter, and people are watching.
So I do have a question that I wasn't sure if you would get addressed, so I was holding off. But given what you're talking about now, I think at a bare minimum, you alluded to the very real possibility, likelihood, I would argue, that the courts will decide some version. So if you could talk a little bit about both timing, because the courts could be getting this very late given what information we don't have, and then just, not just for us, but for anybody, for the public, could they potentially agree on congressional districts but need to do the courts get handed? Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So the courts have gotten better in this area, where in the past they kind of waited for the legislature to not do anything and then jump in. So at least the last 20 or 30 years, they have prepared that the legislature is not going to get it done in time. So my understanding is they are gearing up and getting prepared for this. And if the legislature doesn't get their work done by that date, that they're ready to go. The issue, though, is if the legislature doesn't do it, the court's not going to publish plans and show the public what they're doing until that happens, I assume. So it will be a delay because, the court does want to get public input also. And I think they may be doing some sort of redistricting commission or something, I believe. So that will still cause a delay if the legislature doesn't get it done. But the courts are preparing to jump in.
Thank you. That's what I heard. And for those who don't know, the only time in the last half century that it wasn't decided by the courts was in '92 when Governor Carlson didn't veto it fast enough. He had intended to veto it, and it would have gone to the courts. But I think since then, the governors have paid even more attention.
So, on the, and I'm sure Roxanne will cover this, but we are talking to the cities about their redistricting and making sure they're ready to go, because they have to get done before we can go. So the sooner they get done, the sooner we can start. And so we are talking to them, and one of the big changes that we've seen now with so much absentee balloting is less people at the polls on election day. So theoretically, where they used to have a certain size and a certain number of people in a polling place, they can now expand that size and probably have less polling places like in St. Cloud or Sartell or something like that, because not as many people are coming to the polls on election day. So that's one change we'll be talking to them about. So.
Very tight timeline.
Yep.
Crazy tight timeline.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Persky.
Two quick questions, Randy. First of all, have we ever had a challenge on redistricting in Stearns?
Not since we've been here. So
Yeah.
we and Dave have been through the last two, and we've not had any challenge. And the board has, both times have picked very good plans.
Okay.
So
And then the second question is, we can't avoid splitting up St. Cloud, obviously the size of St. Cloud, but I hope we would avoid the other communities as far as perhaps representation. You wouldn't want to split up Holdingford or Kimball or as far
I would
as-
agree with that. Wade Park, I believe, is split right now too, and Munson. The county is a little more challenging than other places because we can't, figure out our own lines. We have to work with the lines that are there. So typically, if you're moving a township, for instance, you're also moving that city. and that gets to be a big block of people. So it's more challenging for the county because of that. We have to deal with the lines that are already there, and some of those lines are a lot of people if you move them. So.
Commissioner Linsmeyer?
Yeah, in the past, I've even seen where a small city was split between two congressional districts. So size doesn't, or lack of therein, doesn't get you a whole lot. So, yeah, it gets to be an adventure.
Yeah.
In terms of the drama, and this is my fourth go-round, and most of the drama that has taken place with this organization have been based around, it's a complicated issue, and most of the drama based on lack of understanding of the process, as opposed to, I can think of only one instance where there was more drama than was really needed to be among board members because of dubious intentions. But the reality is we've looked at a bunch of plans in various cycles, but generally it took a while to digest, but we got it done.
So there is a public hearing that comes at the end. Certainly we'll publish it. And you're right, the understanding of the process is not well understood. And Mike and myself did meet with the League of Women Voters last week, so I think that was helpful. And we'll be getting the word out and trying to inform people. And in your point, Joe, you're absolutely right. Splitting a community like a township, which has happened here, that causes a lot of confusion for the voters and makes administration harder. And as the auditors, we're certainly beating that drum that we shouldn't be doing that. But the congressional district, they have to get it to the person. Where we have a 10% variance, they have to get it to the person. That's their requirement. So that's why you see some weird stuff from them. So I think Roxanne's going to do an election update here.
Right, as Randy mentioned, we did have an email go out to the cities regarding redistricting that have multiple precincts. So the city of Sartell, St. Cloud, Way Park, St. Joe. So we did give them a copy of the manual and the timeline for redistricting. So we are starting those communications with the cities. I just want to finish with some changes coming for 2022. It was. So some of the things that we're looking at for 2022, we did have a drive-through in 2020 with COVID. That was very popular. We are looking at having some drop boxes in 2022. We did have a number of cities where we had direct voting locations. We have decided to drop that. So I think we had 11 or 12, and we are probably going down to about 8. So we took away the cities that did not have a very high volume. And so with that, we would have less drop-off locations because the cities that were direct voting locations were also drop-off locations. Something that we're looking into this for 2022 as well, when we've had some communications with Benton County and Sherburne County and the city of St. Cloud, is we are going to have a combined polling place, and we will have that polling location over at City Hall for 2022. And then another change for 2022, if you remember in 2020, because of COVID, we were given 14 days to process the absentee ballots. That was reduced back to 7 days. So that, depending on the amount of absentees, I don't think we'll have as many as we did in 2020, but I don't think we're going to go back to where we were in 2018. So again, they did reduce that to 7 days for us to start processing those. So those are some of the changes for 2022 coming up. But other than that, and if anybody has any questions.
So I'm taking that last one might mean you're going to have to figure out some more staffing just to get through that.
It's, yes, yeah. So, like, you know. to
Don't get me
again
wrong,
have-
you were very efficient, but
Yeah, we had over 40,000 absentees, I guess. You know, yeah, I guess if I could guess, we'd probably have the lower 30s for 2022. I don't think that's me.
no,
so-
that's not you. That was
No.
crisp, though.
I think Jan is trying to fine tune.
I was going to say, maybe, yes, I think she's trying to fine tune
I should've
versus
shut up
telling
and
us to
not-
be done. Commissioner Persky, it looks
Just a
like you have a
quick-
question.
Just a quick question. Then with these changes and with the use of the procedure that we used, you had no security issues that we were made aware of, or any issues with the process that was not appropriate as far as the way the election operated? So that means we're not making any changes in reaction to anything in particular, other than number of voters.
That is correct, yeah, we did not have any security issues. Is-
Commissioner Lensmeyer.
The local pressures that I've seen, and this was a personal experience in the last election cycle, in my case, you understand that the goal of various people involved in the process are different. Obviously, you know, as a candidate, you'd like to have certainly immediate results if possible, but even beyond that, you want accurate results. Well, what happens is the media wants instant results. And the way, as the election process has been changed to accommodate more and more people, that's tougher and tougher to achieve. In my case, what happened is between the evening of the election and canvassing, there was a swing in the total voter count. The result that I got on the night of the election was smaller than canvassing. Now, in a close election, a very close election, like we've had in the past, understand on a countywide election, our current county attorney won by a margin in her race of 58 votes on a countywide race. Terrell had a margin of 70 votes.
It was a little higher than
Getting-
that,
What'd you get?
but it was a little higher than that, but go ahead.
Okay, but you get the idea that I guess it's, what's that commercial where the punchline is, results may vary? Well, results may vary.
And you know, in 2020, that was a change as well with COVID, is that any ballots that we received postmarked on election day were still
Yeah.
counted. So there was some
Right.
changes in 2020.
And I think Commissioner Lensmeyer, your point about making sure things are accurate and that the media gets that we prize accuracy.
Yeah, just, I think maybe the days of immediate results that are accurate may have come and gone, even though, you know, various media outlets will represent that they know, you know, in this exit polling and all of these measuring devices that they have. There's, you know, and that's not even talking about voter fraud, which I will not get into, because I don't know anything about it.
Right. Anything else from either of you? Any other questions or comments? Dr. Williams? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's helpful. It'll be obviously more helpful once we get a little bit more
Oh, yeah,
information.
stay tuned.
Exactly. Stay tuned. That's what we could have on our agenda. So our last item is issues by commissioners. Mike, I didn't know, did you want, or I can do a report, or Joe could do a report from NACO. Did you want to do a quick update from us meeting with our delegation, or do you want one of us to do that?
I'm happy to do it.
Go ahead. Go ahead, and then
Madam
we'll
Chair.
start going around.
As you know, we did attend the NACO conference, Commissioner Persky, Commissioner Clark, and myself. And it was actually, I thought, one of the better NACO conferences that I've been to. Aside from that, though, then we were able to meet with Senator Klobuchar and her staff and go through those 4 congressionally directed spending requests. And I think we felt really good about that meeting. We were also able to meet on a conference call with Senator Smith's staff. She's not, at least at that time, wasn't meeting people in person yet. But again, we met with her staff member and went through those projects. And David Church's office is connecting those senators and Congressman Emmer's office on the transportation request for the bridge over County Road 75. So I think we're putting the pieces of the puzzle together as best we can. We followed up with further information, and we will keep in contact about that process. The process, at least in the Senate, is that the senators need to send a letter to the Senate leadership with a list of projects, and all 4 of our projects were in the list by both senators. So at least that first step is complete. And of course, David Church's office will help us shepherd those along as best we can. So, and commissioners, have anything to add? That's great.
We can certainly do that when we get to our places if there's something to add there. Thank you. Yeah, it was very worthwhile. Commissioner Lensmeyer.
I have nothing. I was ambivalent about continuing our meeting format from before or meeting like this, and I have no complaint either way. The reason you were hearing in this last presentation an occasional sound like what Janet's trying to do is to make this sound crisper. Now that makes sense to somebody that, say, runs a soundboard for a rock and roll band or an audio engineer. It'll be something we'll have to learn here, but yeah, the new format will be an interesting learning process.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Mergen.
Just a reminder, Stearns County Fair starts Thursday in Sauk Center.
I'll be
Great.
there Saturday.
Thank you. Commissioner Notch.
Yeah, I'll be there Friday. So I guess,
Great, I can tell everybody Steve's all wrong.
Whatever he said.
when are you there, Saturday?
Clueless, he's just, you know.
In other words, I gotta go after you again Saturday, just to correct the,
You'll be working Saturday night, but the beer garden's open.
oh, okay. No, I guess the only thing is that I would mention that I won't be at the August 10th meeting, so,
Oh,
Right.
yeah, we had planned a trip last year, and
okay.
so I will be gone.
My understanding is we'll be handling nothing controversial at that meeting.
Okay.
Go ahead. Commissioner Persky.
I'll just mention I'll be at the fair on Thursday, noon to 2 o'clock when the barns are still fresh. So I hope to see you out there. And I'll just support Dr. Williams. It was a very productive visit to D.C., perhaps one of the most productive I've experienced as a commissioner, and look forward to some of the things happening that, you know, we were informed on. And also just Commissioner from Ramsey County, Mary Jo McGuire, was elected second vice chair or second vice president, so she will actually become the president of NACO in a couple of years, so hats off to her.
It was fun to be there for that.
Yeah.
It was. And there was some challenges with voting software, so we got that figured out. Yeah, the trip was great. I think in addition to the congressional visits, we had a lot of opportunity to hear from administration and some the congressional side particularly about the Rescue Plan Act. So there was a good opportunity to be giving 2 cents worth from counties, treasury, et cetera. That was very helpful. And then, as you know, I've been participating in the NACO Broadband Task Force. We did our final report there. There's going to be a lot of work to get done now, but they have been circling back. The people working on the bipartisan, hopefully that infrastructure agreement will get through. And there was an opportunity to weigh in on some of their language as it related to broadband. And my understanding is they've accepted that, but we'll see what the congressional process was. And then in addition to Mary Jo, I actually got appointed to be the chair for the Telecom and Technology Committee, which is largely about the broadband. So I'm very excited about that. And our examples of what we're trying to do and the challenges that our residents have faced are a big part of that continuing to move forward. So in terms of stay tuned, Commissioner Lensmeyer, we all may be having some things to do. And Senator Klobuchar reinforced that this is a topic that she is personally really committed to, which is great. And then, Joe, I don't think I knew this until recently, so I apologize. But, Joe, my understanding is you're now chair of the APO. And I think that's also great for, from a county standpoint, from Stearns County. So I want to congratulate you on that, and my sympathies as well. And then, yes, get out to the fair. And did you have anything else you wanted to say about that?
Well, just, and we will be making an APO visit to Washington too. So, you know, we've got transportation issues we're working on. So looking
And
forward
just
to
keep
that
doing that.
infrastructure plan.
And I guess kind of circling back, it really, I think, made a difference. Kudos to you, Dr. Williams, and others for getting both Congressman Emmer and Congresswoman Fishback to be participating with us remotely. I mean, I think that that's really helped build the seeds for kind of moving forward. And Senator Klobuchar reinforced that Congressman Emmer had already been reaching out to her about that bridge project. And so it's really good to see on our behalf that kind of working relationship. And on that, I think, did you have one more thing?
I've been asked a couple times. Our meeting tomorrow morning at 8:30 is in this room. I hope you saw I sent you a document that will let you know what the topics are there. We're going to talk about our advisory committees, and we're going to talk, of course, about solar. So if you missed that document, let me know. The first part of the meeting, I've said it will be up to near an hour to talk about. If you recall, during our strategic planning, we talked about how can we get more diversity on our committees. And so that piece of the document talks about two things. It talks about commissioners being on those committees and should they be on some of those committees. And then the second part is some techniques to maybe get some more that I think will get some more diversity eventually on our committees. And then the second part of the meeting is the solar, where we have 3 entities that are going to be in and give short presentations. And then you'll be able to ask those people questions, and they'll come from all 3 perspectives. So hopefully it'll be a learning experience for you, which is what I thought we were after.
Great, thank you. And if you haven't gotten a chance to read it, it probably is helpful to read that memo ahead of time. It was very thoughtful and useful and a lot to think about. All right.
Yeah, I would rather not have to walk through that memo. I'd rather that we discuss it.
Great. Okay. Well, it's wonderful to see everybody. Our meeting is adjourned.